Alright everyone, so today we are going to be comparing the Gan X, XS, I, and RSM. So today we're going to be doing it in a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest or the best, and 1 being the worst. And we're going to be doing it in 10 different categories. So it's going to be unboxing experience, feel, price, customizability, speed, loudness, Bluetooth, weight, accessories, and then an average of 12. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can be notified of upcoming videos. Alright, so first up, coming to the unboxing experience. When you're going through the Gan XS, you get lots of different stuff. The unboxing experience is super good, you get tons of stuff, and so that for that reason, I gave the XS a 10. Then when we came down to the X, I currently don't have it, but at the same time, it is still really good. And from watching lots of videos, it is just about the same as the XS, so I also gave it a 10. Then the Gan I also has a very large box with super customizability stuff. Comes with a lot of unboxing stuff, and it's just overall really pleasant with the Gan feel, and I also gave that a 10. And then finally, the Gan RSM, I gave it a 6 just because it didn't have as much stuff in it as I would have liked, even though it is a budget cube, which is mostly why it didn't have all the extra accessories. So just for a wrap up, the Gan XS got 10 points, the X got 10 points, the I got 10 points, and the RS got 6 points on that round. So now we're going to move on to feel. Overall, I think that the Gan X has the best feel. On this category, I gave it a 10. It's super buttery smooth and is super fast. And then the XS, I actually gave it a 9, just because it's not as buttery smooth as the X. Now, this is due to the magnetic system. The magnets on the X you have to push through, and it makes it more aligned, whereas on the XS, it kind of rubs against the pieces. This does not take away from the speediness of the cube. In fact, it actually makes it a little bit faster, but just overall is a lot more pleasant to use the X. Then we go to the I actually gave it a 6 because it overall is not a very good feel. It's kind of crunchy and I don't really like it, and it's really gummy feeling. And then when we get to the RSM, I gave it an 8 because it's super fast, super nice, and the magnetic bump is really nice, just from the magnets that I put in it. So, to round it up, the Gan X won that round with 10 points, then the Gan XS with 9, the Gan RS with 8, and the Gan I with 6. Alright, so now let's go into price. So the Gan RS is going to take this one for only $16 or $25 with magnets at it, so I gave it a 10. Then we come in with the X and XS at 7. Although it is pretty expensive, it's still really good for its price, so I gave it a 7. And then the Gan I topping out at a whopping $100 and not being as good as the other cubes, I gave it a 4. And so on this round, the Gan RS wins with the cheapest price of 10, and then the Gan X and XS, both the same price, get a 7, and the Gan I, the most expensive, get a 4. So now let's go to customizability. With the XS, you get the most customizability. You can change the magnets from strong to medium to light, and you can change the springs with 6 different settings and the tightness to 2 different settings. Then with the Gan X, you cannot change the springs, but you can change the magnets. So it does have a little bit advantage because you can have no magnets in the Gan X versus the Gan XS, but you cannot change the springs as much and as easy as the Gan XS. So in that, I gave the Gan X an 8 and the XS a 10. Then in the Gan I gave the Gan I a 6, just because you can't change the magnets or the springs, and you can only choose between 2 settings. And then the Gan RS, while it is the same as the Gan I with the 2 settings and no magnet changing, the problem is that you have to put in your own magnets, and which does allow for customizability, but it's just a hassle. So the Gan XS wins that round with a 10, X gets an 8, I gets a 6, and the Gan RS gets 4 points for this round. Now we're going to move on to speed. The Gan X and XS are both really similar in speed. With no lube, or the fastest lube possible, you can make them both the same speed, and you can also slow them down, of course. Then the Gan I, the top speed is not even near as close to the Gan X or XS, but you can slow it down, so I gave it a 6. Then the RS is a little bit faster than the I, not too much faster, and it is in fact slower than the XS and X, so overall I just gave that a 7. So taking this round, the Gan XS has 10 points, X has 10 points, the RS has 7 points, and the I has 6 points. So now let's move on to the loudness of the cube. So the cubes, this also is going to go with speed. So this may not apply to some people, but the quietest cube was in fact the Gan X. The buttery smooth just made it super not clacky, and it was the quietest, even though it was still quite loud. Then the Gan XS comes in on that as a tie with the Gan RSM. They sound exactly the same, and they're relatively loud, so I did give them a 6. And then the Gan I being extremely loud, but not the loudest I've ever heard, a 2. So with loudness, if that matters to you, the Gan X is the quietest, and the I is the loudest. So now we're going to move on to Bluetooth, just because I have the Bluetooth in here. So the XS actually got a 4 in this category. Now you may be wondering why. This is because you can add the switch out the center cap so that you can use it with the Gan robot, which does, in a way, you can call it Bluetooth compatibility. Now the Gan X does not come with those center caps just because it's a little bit older, but the new Gan X does, but I still gave it 0 because this is the old Gan X. Then with the Gan I gave it a 7 because it works with the robot, and it works with the of course, app that's made for it. That's the whole thing about the Gan I. Now, the app does have some issues, and so does the Cube, so I ended up giving it a 7. And then the RS also has a 0 because it is not compatible either. Now, let's move on to weight. The Gan XS is the lightest of all 4 with a 10 scoring in that category. Then the X is a little bit heavier, but not still relatively light, so that becomes a 9. The Gan I is pretty much a lot heavier than the Gan X, so that comes in with a 7, and the RSM coming at last place with the 6. So topping off that round, the Gan XS is the lightest, and the Gan RS is the heaviest. So Gan XS scored a 10, X scored a 9, I scored a 7, and RS scored a 6. So now let's go on to the accessories that you get with the cubes. The Gan XS comes with lots of different accessories, but you don't actually have to have the separate magnetic capsules as you do with the X. So the accessories are already kind of in the cube. Then you also get the cube little stand that can also be used for the Gan 2x2, which is really cool, and little tensioning tool that works really well. Then with the Gan X, I gave it a 7, whereas the XS got a 9. So the X got a 7 because you can change the magnets, even though it's a hassle with the separate. Then with the Gan I, that actually scored a 10 with accessories, just because it comes with a charger and all of that fun stuff, and it comes with extra springs, even though you can't change the magnets. So I just decided to give it to 10, just because I think it deserved it with all the extra stuff you get with it, rather than the X and XS. And then finally, the Gan RSM. It scored a 3 in this category because it came with the cube and a pamphlet, and that's about it. So it scored relatively low. There are a lot of cubes that come with more accessories than the Gan RS, but hey, you're only paying $16 for it. I mean, what more can you ask for the cube? Then finally, we're going to get to the XS. Average of 12. So I did an average of 12 with all these cubes, and then I compared my times. And as you can imagine, the Gan XS pulled out with the top, scoring 10 points in this because it had the fastest average. Then, actually, the next up was the Gan RSM. It had the second fastest average, scoring 8 points. Then you had the Gan X in third place with an average of 12, just because I think it's just a little bit harder to control, just because it's so much looser than some of the other cubes. It's a little bit harder to control, and it's a lot faster, so that ended up scoring a 6. And then the Gan I overall scored 5, just because it's a lot slower than the other cubes, so I can't use my full potential. So just rounding that out, the Gan XS won this round with an average of 12 with 10 points. The Gan X with 6 points, Gan I with 5 points, and Gan RS with 8 points. Now let's move on to the total. So as you can imagine, the winner of this video is the Gan XS, scoring at 85 points. That is only 15 points away from being max of what you could possibly have. Then with the Gan X coming in second place with a 75, Gan I with a 63, and Gan RSM with a 58. Now, this is actually in the order, I guess I say, if you're going to get the X, go with the XS. Obviously, they're the same price. The XS is a whole lot better, scoring 10 points higher. Then with the Gan I mean, if you really think you're going to use the app as that much, then I say definitely get it if you have a lot of money. But otherwise, I wouldn't say get it for the cube, just because the Gan XS is a whole lot better and definitely even cheaper than the Gan I, which you don't see a lot more often these days. Scoring it at 63 points. Not bad, but, you know, it could use some work. Then, finally, in last place with the Gan RSM, which I think deserves higher on this list, but it really can't just because of what we scored it on, with 58 points. Overall, for $25, if there was a budget, like a price, the price is really what pulled it together, but then the accessories, just because it's so much cheaper, you don't get as much with the other cubes. So, they're all really, really good cubes. I definitely recommend any of them. But I would say, if you have $60, get the Gan XS over the X. And if you don't have enough, I'd say get the Gan RSM if you have around $25. And the Gan I, I'd say only get it if you think you're going to use the app. I know that personally, I don't use the app that much. So, this is my comparison. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for staying to the very end of the video. And I'll just let y'all enjoy the rest of this solve. And I hopefully you just enjoyed. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.